20 plus, 20.1, what's the difference? And for the record, I am aware that there is a low-cut version of the 20.1 on the way. I've seen the pros wearing it just like you have. I'm not sure when it's gonna become available, but it looks like it's just the 20.1 with obviously a low-cut design. Probably gonna be a little bit different in the heel because of that design, but other than that, pretty much all the information in this video will also apply to those. And just to be clear, in this video, we're just gonna talk about the differences. If you're looking for individual details on either of these two boots, my reviews for both are up on the channel. With that said, here are the differences. The most expensive boot in the lineup is the Predator Mutator 20 Plus, bearing a retail price of $275 US, where the Predator Mutator 20.1 retails for $225. That's $50 less than the Laceless model. Both are top-end boots, both perform really well, although I do think one outperforms the other in certain areas, but because one is $50 cheaper, clearly the 20.1 is the better value. Speaking of price, if you happen to be interested in either of these two boots, there are links to the review pages down below in the description of this video, where you'll find buy it now links with exclusive SR4U coupon codes to pick up either of these two boots below their normal retail prices. One of the most controversial aspects of the new Predator is, of course, the way that it looks. I mean, come on, the boots have spikes. Ow. And while looks are totally down to personal opinion, I think most would argue that the 20 Plus looks a lot cooler than the 20.1. In fact, I've heard a lot of people say that the 20.1 looks cheap in comparison to the 20 Plus, which I don't entirely agree with, but I do see where you're coming from. What's funny about this complaint though is that this isn't anything new for the Adidas brand. Ever since they decided to have two top-end models, one laceless, one laced, the laceless model always being more expensive, I think it's fair to say that the laceless boots have always had that little bit of extra detail and have arguably been cooler looking, I would say 9 out of 10 times. That's definitely the case here with the Predator. I just don't think that people are quite so happy with the amount of visual differences there actually are. And I think that also comes down to the fact that a lot of people realize at this point that the laced version is the better model, but they just prefer the look of the laceless boot. So when it comes to looks, I don't think there's any competition. The laceless one does look better, but also keep in mind, this is just one colorway. Future colorways, it might be a little bit of a different story. Also, this super high collar is kind of weird looking. Now, I've been seeing a lot of misinformation when it comes to the uppers of these two boots, where a lot of people are confused about the differences and angry about what Adidas has given us on the 20.1 when they definitely shouldn't be. The 20 Plus is clearly branded, and you can see in the construction with the pattern that they've gone with that it is the typical prime knit, a knit upper, which everyone is used to on top-end boots, especially from the modern Predator line. In the case of the 20.1, obviously it looks a lot cheaper. You don't actually get to see the knit on the underside, and it's pretty clear that it is a slightly different pattern. It's also not branded as prime knit, which has kind of been the case with the 18.1 and the 19.1 Predator models that came before it. Why isn't this prime knit? It is instead a textile upper, which automatically people have viewed as a downgrade, when in reality, these two uppers feel exactly the same. What needs to be understood here is that a knitted upper is a knitted upper. What makes a prime knit upper different from a knitted upper is nothing other than the fact that they're calling it prime knit, and the difference between a knit upper and a textile upper, like we have on the 20.1, is simply the name. A textile upper is a knit upper because they're both made out of textile materials. Now, with the prime knit and the textile upper that you have on both of these boots, the main difference that you're going to find from the previous generation Predator is that they took a layer of padding out of it. So it used to have a layer of foam in between the prime knit on the outside and the liner on the inside. That is now gone. So you end up with a prime knit material or a textile upper that is much thinner and has the feel of more of a synthetic rather than a padded sock-like material like we saw on the 18 and 19 generations of Predator. The end result is that the focus is more on the Demonskin rubber elements, which do provide a little bit of extra cushioning that has been taken out of the upper itself for these two elements to work together. So even though this textile upper isn't technically prime knit, it's exactly the same thickness, it moves the same way with your foot, it feels the same on foot, and the overall touch is pretty much identical. The only significant difference is that this looks cooler. This one is too high. All right, cool. quite literally the football boot technology from hell, the Demonskin, or the spikes scattered across the upper on both of these two boots, is really the defining characteristic of the Predator 20 experience. Long story short, it adds a ton of extra grip on the ball, but as I'm sure a lot of you guys have noticed, there are quite a few more Demonskin spikes on the Laceless 20 Plus model versus what you get on the 20.1, but there's even more differences than that. On the 20 Plus, you're going to find a total of 406 Demonskin spikes, which are individual spikes made out of a soft rubber compound that, as you can see, are angled ever so slightly forward with a very small tip. You can actually hear how grippy it is against my finger. It provides a ton of extra grip on the ball, and basically no matter what part of your foot makes contact with the ball, there is going to be a ton of extra grip, to the point where it actually does take a little bit of getting used to. But the way that they've done this striking element makes a lot of sense in that it doesn't restrict the movement or flex or stretch of the upper while it's on your foot, like pretty much every other traditional striking element would, mainly because it's just broken up into so many little pieces. On the 20.1, however, you'll notice that there are far less Demonskin spikes, and they're also a slightly different shape. Instead of 406, you'll find 258. That's the unofficial number that I've heard. At this point, Adidas hasn't actually provided any official numbers on how many of these spikes there actually are, but you can see it doesn't go to the third Adidas stripe like it does on the 20 Plus. It spans still the entire forefoot and toe box area, and then goes mostly through the midfoot, but doesn't go right to the heel counter. So there are a lot less of these, but I have to be honest in saying that the amount that you miss is not something that's going to be super noticeable, and if anything, you don't actually need 406 little rubber elements. 250 something is plenty, I can assure you. You'll also notice that the spikes themselves are kind of more straight up and down. They're not angled forward as much, which means that they do have a slightly stiffer feel to them just because the tip is a little bit bigger. I have confirmed that the rubber compound itself is identical on both boots, so the amount of grip that it provides is pretty much exactly the same. There's just a little bit less grip because there are technically less elements. Now, I realize that more grip sounds better than less grip, but I can assure you that on the official grip scale, these are both off the charts and provide more than enough grip for pretty much anybody, to the point where you're not really gonna notice a difference. In fact, there's so much grip that it actually takes getting used to, especially when it comes to dribbling. I think the added grip when shooting the ball is by far the best aspect of this brand new Predator model. And whether or not having grip elements going all the way to the back heel is important to you, I guess is really the major difference between these two when you're talking about grip. Yes, this has less elements, but the experience is pretty well the same. One looks cooler than the other, but they're exactly the same otherwise. And they feel about the same. More seriously, they are exactly the same, about 250 grams or 8.8 ounces in a size 9.5 US. Once you get these two boots on feet, that's when you're really gonna notice a significant difference. Not in regards to the feel of the upper, contrary to what a lot of people are saying, but in regards to the tightness, the way that upper wraps your foot, and especially the lockdown. With the laceless model, it's a laceless boot, kind of what you would expect. Honestly, I don't think the lockdown is all that good, but if you've worn laceless boots in the past, you kind of know what to expect. It's just okay. I would personally recommend wearing these exclusively with grip socks, because without them, I just think the lockdown is well below average. As far as the 20.1 is concerned, the lockdown is actually really, really good. What they've done with the shape of this new Predator, which is also the case on the laceless model, is that they have narrowed the midfoot ever so slightly, where it just fits a lot tighter. On the laceless model, that's not as noticeable because the laceless system across the top of the foot stretches so easily, there's very little tension through the midfoot, where when you have the lacing system, especially the way that they've laid it out, where it grabs the upper from a slightly deeper position in the higher areas, it really does a good job of grabbing your foot, holding it in place, and locking it inside of the boot, making for what I would argue is actually the most responsive option within Adidas's current lineup. Both versions fit really nicely, but when it comes to lockdown and responsiveness, the 20.1 is just better. Well, honestly, I can recommend either of them because I think they're both phenomenal football boots. What I will say is that the 20 Plus just isn't for me. due to the lack of lockdown, but I've just never been a big fan of the laceless system, and I like to have my foot feel very secure and locked in place in any football boot that I wear. With that said, if you're a fan of laceless Adidas boots and you've worn them in the past, hadn't had any issues with them, especially previous generation Predators, I don't see why you wouldn't be happy with the lockdown provided and the experience provided by the Predator 20 Plus. Objectively though, I don't think there's any arguing that the 20.1 isn't the better performer out of these two boots. The lockdown, the adjustability, the responsiveness that is added by way of a simple lacing system really does make the world of difference, where when you have these two boots on feet, obviously from the crazy grip that both of them provide, they are very, very different in terms of their experience due to the amount of lockdown alone. So for me, even though I don't think it's as cool looking as the 20 Plus, it is definitely my preference of these two boots, and I think objectively, the better Predator. I don't know why I did the slight pause. If you're wondering, I don't script these. And that's pretty much it for this one, guys. If you enjoyed the video, please support it with a like. Again, if you're interested in either of these for yourself, there will be links to the review page down below in the description, where you'll find buy it now links with exclusive SR4U coupon codes to pick these up below their normal retail prices. If you have any questions regarding these two boots or any other comparison requests with the brand new Predators, leave those down below in the comments, and I'll take a look at everything you guys have to say. If you're not subscribed already, make sure you hit that subscribe button along with the little bell notification so you get notified when the next new video goes live. You can find all my social media information linked down below in the description as well. Other than that, guys, thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.